Well, Pete, I think this is an unbelievable mistake that the government's made. But the important thing here is that they fess up, that they don't punch down and blame others. They don't blame businesses or the people who work in a department. They need to say that we committed to spend $6.5 billion on supporting Australians that need to stay connected to work and in jobs, and that we're going to do it. So they shouldn't be arguing about how it happened. We know who's missing out. And the urgent need today is that they extend that JobKeeper program to those workers.
Well, before we get some detail on that, the Treasurer did say this morning that the government acted on overly pessimistic health advice. Do you support the decisions that they originally made?
Well, I don't think that stacks up, as an excuse. It seems like every day now there's a different reason as to why this bungle happened. But you've got to look at the human consequence of it. We had a government that promised to spend this money on keeping Australian workers in jobs. And yes, we supported that. In fact, we called for a wage subsidy because we knew how important it was for public health, for people to stay connected, to have an income, to be able to get tested, to be able to stay at home if they needed to. But you can't then rewrite history. There's a huge problem with unemployment. 600,000 Australian workers lost their job just in the month of April. So it's not like there isn't a dramatic need. The government can't say there's not a need for more assistance. They just have to say, OK, we've somehow made a colossal mistake in the figures here. Now we're going to make sure that every Australian who needs support is going to get it.
Why wouldn't that excuse stack up? I mean, I guess everyone was spooked by those images that came from overseas, and the natural reaction would be that might well happen here. So perhaps it was better to go overs than unders.
Because they haven't given us the facts that make it stack up. What we don't know yet is how many businesses have been trying to get the JobKeeper scheme and perhaps haven't got it because they've found it too difficult or complex. You can't on the one hand say people made mistakes with the forms and then say, oh, though we're giving it to everybody who needs it. There's just no facts that back that up. And those figures, those April figures, show that if 600,000 people lost their job in 1 month, then there's a problem with JobKeeper not being in place to assist those workers staying in jobs and staying connected. So the government story is not consistent.
The Treasurer on the show a little bit earlier ruled out expanding the JobKeeper scheme. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think that's unacceptable. Let's just go through who's missing out. Some of the lowest paid workers who we rely on are missing out on this scheme. So casual workers who've been working for a company for less than 12 months, workers who are working in higher education, in arts and entertainment, those Donata workers who just by a quirk of fate where their company got sold from an Australian company to a foreign-owned company, thousands of them working in airline services with no access to JobKeeper, and of course short-term visa workers that we had in this country that we're relying on to do important work, who are paying taxes, who aren't getting JobKeeper or JobSeeker. So there's over 2 million of these workers who had no assistance. Why wouldn't Josh Frydenberg get his pen out today and say, we're going to make sure that every worker who needs this is getting it?
But he says that they already benefit from the scheme.
Well, I don't know how he can say that because everyone I just went through is missing out. That's just the fact. So I'm not sure what the Treasurer is referring to. He's admitted that workers in higher education are excluded. He's admitted that casuals, in fact, the scheme is designed to stop casual workers who haven't been with the one company or the one employer for more than a year. Now, most hospitality workers, that's who they are. The nature of that work is there's multiple employers and they're often not long-term in nature. These are the people that we know. These are workers excluded explicitly in the scheme and left with nothing to live on and not enough food to eat. So this is cruel to not extend the program. And also the other thing, Pete, is that it's actually bad for the economy because if people don't have money to spend, if there's not money in your pocket, then you're not spending it in your local business. The economy is not getting up and running again unless there's enough money going around.
But isn't it true, though, that if we are saving $60 billion, doesn't that ease the financial burden on our younger people moving forward? It's a debt that now they don't have to pay back.
No, that's actually a false economy, because it's money now when we're in a crisis that will actually mean that the length of this crisis is shortened. If we don't spend money now to make people secure, to give confidence so that people know that they have a job that they can spend, then the effect on all those small businesses and on larger businesses of people being unemployed or not having enough money to be able to meet household needs is going to mean we've got a longer and deeper crisis, more unemployment, and a much, much slower recovery, which will be harder for young people and everyone in the future. So it's actually better to realise that we need to stimulate the economy, support everybody who needs it, spend some money now so we save money in the long term.
Just finally, how would you define a casual worker? Because, for many of them, they might just be working a couple of shifts a week and then they're entitled to, a few hundred or a few $1,000s extra. So in a sense, they're getting a pay rise. So where do you draw the line?
Well, that's not the majority of circumstances. The majority of workers are not receiving more than they would before. But you also, you've got to remember, these are some of the lowest paid workers in the country, and many of them were in jobs, and the majority of them are women. The majority are younger people. They're in insecure work. Every cent of money that they get, they spend, and it goes into household income. A lot of the younger people in hospitality, for example, are being forced to move back home with their families. So every bit of support they get is actually going to that household that's in crisis, which again helps people getting into a worse crisis, both in their health and in their spending.